have lost anything at all if you used it properly. But if you don't make preparation of some kind, spiritual preparation, physical preparation, all of these things that we talk about today are so very important. God teaches us life lessons. He teaches life lessons from things like preparation. If your children have never grown anything, you have not helped your child at all in their education. If they've not grown something, if they've not had participation in dealing with animals in some way, where they were responsible, whatever it is, these things are important things God teaches us. You may actually help your children understand the Bible more clearly by embracing a sustainable living lifestyle than they would ever have understood it otherwise. Now, this passage today is, get your Bible, Proverbs chapter 31, verse 1, not verse 1, verse 10. And you're going to say, what? That's going to be about crisis preparation? Now, the principles in this are about crisis preparation. And the person here, instead of talking about Noah, instead of talking about Joseph, instead of talking about the mistakes that the rich landowner had when he built all the barns and he filled them all up and he said, let's eat, drink, and be merry. And that guy and his mistakes we talked about last year. We're going to see these principles beginning in verse 10. An excellent wife who can find, for her worth is far above jewels, and the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. Now, as you look at this passage, instead of those guys going in the closet, oh, I caught you. As you look at this passage, her worth is not because that he will have no lack of gain. Most of the people want to make that connection. There's another phrase in there that is the crucial phrase. Y'all see it? It's in between. I want you to say it with me. The heart of her husband trusts in her. The heart of her husband trusts in her. That's what her value is. He has someone that he can count on, someone that he can trust, some person who is biblically his helpmate, that God has put them together, and God uses each one of them to accomplish their purposes better together than he would be able to use them individually, because he had a plan for them as husband and wife. Now, as you look at that particular passage, go on to see some of the things it describes about her. For she looks for wool and flax, and she works with her hands in delight. She's like merchant ships, and she brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is still night, and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. In this passage, what you're seeing is that the way that she is living her life is not a drudgery. It's not a struggle. It's not just a horrible experience. She's doing these things and she finds delight in them. Now, I'm going to tell you a little thing ahead of time, and I want you to know this, because otherwise you'd have to wait all the way to the end. And some of you are not going to make it that far. I can see it in your eyes already. That's why I asked them to turn the air down. The passage later on says that this woman fears God. Now, most of the time we see the phrase, she fears God, and we're like, oh, fears God. No, she has an awesome respect for her God, that she is paying attention with her life to what matters to him, so that what matters to him matters to her. And what matters to her then brings her joy. It's not a drudgery. She doesn't, think about whether or not she can, how many ways can you cook small children? And, that's not, That's not what she's thinking. She's thinking about how God is going to work through her and her husband in the lives of those kids to bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And so she is going out to get this food. Now, she did not get to go to Kroger. And there were no double, triple coupons. She had to actually go to market and hunt through everything. And if it took her going to some lengths to get something that she wanted to provide for her family, she did it. And so when you think about crisis preparation, how many of you guys in the room, if I ask you what your crisis preparation was right now and what you have put away, you went to Sam's and you bought a case of Spam? Yeah, preacher, that's my crisis preparation. I got me a case of Spam. Remind me not to come to your house. You know, there's nothing about preparing for a crisis that says that it has to be boring and tedious. What it says is that from the good things of your life, you're setting things aside in case there are times of difficulty. You're putting those things aside. And so she rises while it's still at night. She gives food to her household, portions to her maids. Now, that gives food to her household, portions to her maids, says some things according to commentaries about distribution of responsibilities, food for the household, and then maidens have things to take care of, their responsibilities to be cared for. And so as you look at what we've got so far in preparation, we look at this woman. He is blessed because he has her, not because he has her stuff. The basics are always key to the whole situation. If you have air, if you have water, food, clothing, shelter, protection, you may get them in a little different order from time to time. You are talking about the things you have to have. Do you have to have a cell phone with unlimited text?
No.
Y'all are not going to argue that? Yeah, okay, we got one up here. Yeah. Okay, I don't think it's anywhere on the list, but some of the students are saying, you see that part, clothing? Yeah, that is a cell phone with unlimited text. You don't go running around out there naked without a cell phone. And then the fact that she's desiring it, working at the basics for her family, these are important things to understand. Look with me, if you would, in verse 16. She considers a field. Now you would say, this is a man thing, right? No, you don't understand the culture of the nation of Israel. A lot of the things that had to do with agriculture and all those focuses in families, especially that were more well-to-do. The husband was sort of in a business-type situation, maybe at the gate, maybe as a judge, providing those kinds of things for the community. The wife was running the household, and she was making things happen. And so she considers the field, and she buys it with her husband's money. No, I mean, she's going to plant the vineyard with the earnings. She girds herself with strength. She makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She stretches out her hands with a distaff. And by the way, we're making, I guess, yarn or something with a distaff. I'm sorry, I didn't research that part. And her hands grasp at the spindle. She is a busy person. But don't forget to go back to the previous verses. She's doing that, and what was the word that we had that was her expression? Delight. She found it as a delight. This was something that she was wanting to be a part of. And so when we add to our preparation list, we understand that she understands agriculture. Because a place where there is no agriculture, there is no culture. Got no food, got no people. They're going to disappear. They're going to die or go somewhere else. And so she's involved with the vineyard. She's involved with having it planted and everything being taken care of. Notice in verse 20, though, she did not make the mistake that the guy last year made when he stored everything up for himself. She extends her hand to the poor and stretches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, Notice that she is not able to do everything for everybody. And some of us think, well, if I can't help everybody, I'm just not going to do anything. Head in the sand again. You won't feel that way at the time when the crisis comes. You'll be looking for somebody to help you, your tribe, get out of a jam. We need to be honest about this. She is helping other people, and she starts by doing what is in the best interest of her own household. Not to say that she doesn't care about other people, but if you're going to care about other folks, why wouldn't you care about your own? Is that common sense enough? And so her household is clothed with scarlet. In other words, she's taking care of them well. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen, purple, and then it says a strange thing in the middle of this passage, because we're going to go back to this kind of stuff. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. And so these are important things in that culture, that he was able to do that sort of thing. Notice in our preparation statement, she does what she does for people. For people who are poor, for people who are in need, for people in her family. She does it for her husband, but we know most of all she's doing this for God. Verse 24, she makes linen garments and sells them. Yeah, women working outside the home, well, she had to get out of the house at least often enough to take the stuff to the market, go to the market shop, doing all these kinds of things. We went through a real controversy in our culture, especially as Christians in the United States of America, deciding whether or not it was acceptable for women to work. Everybody forgot that almost every woman was pushed into some kind of job sector during World War II. And somehow or another, we were going to shove them all back into some other kind of setting. And we went through a real conflict. From God's perspective, this woman is a hero, not because she went to get a 9-to-5 out there and abandoned her family, but because she's doing everything that she can do to be a blessing to her family. She's making preparations. And as a result of that, notice that strength and dignity are her clothing. She doesn't come across as a person who needs entitlements. I've got to have this kind of government assistance. I've got to have that kind of... Now, if you're a person who legitimately deserves and requires those things, then you know what? Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't ever hear me say that you shouldn't. But if you're a person who can work and does not, if you're a person who can expend efforts in different kinds of ways and you do not, God's not real happy about that. How many of y'all remember that New Testament passage describing the situation in the church where a lot of the people were standing out there waiting for Jesus to come back? You know, when he left, didn't he leave? Yeah, he went kind of like right there. So let's stand out here and watch. How long y'all been out here? Oh, about 6 months now. Well, here's the deal. If you will not work, you shall not. Okay. God likes us working. And most of us enjoy eating. I can tell. So as you go through this process with me, and you see she has provisions so she doesn't have to worry about the future. Her focus is not on the fact that she doesn't need God or that she doesn't need God's help, but that she doesn't have to worry about all of this. Why? Why? She's done something. She's done something. And who knows, maybe it won't be enough. Maybe there'll be a winter that's so cold that something more will have to be done. Maybe there'll be a crop failure for a season and everybody will be scrambling to have something for 2 years until the next harvest. But she's done something. And so she doesn't have to be concerned about that. She's not staying up late at night because she's worried. She's staying up late at night because there are things that she delights to do. Now, I want you to take this paperwork. Some of you guys who, I hand you something. If I handed you a newspaper, you'd be halfway through that sucker by now. And I almost hate to hand out anything, but what I want you to see is just the opening statement. When considering whether or not to make some kind of crisis preparations, think about some of the real and perceived strife in the world from these various sources. Now, I didn't want to upset you too much, but there's a page front and back of any one of these things all by themselves could probably do pretty significant damage in the world today. Some of those, as you go through there, you may not have a clue what they're about. And if you have questions on some of these, I'll be more than happy to answer them after church or to talk about that this evening. Notice the third one there, expansion of Sharia law, even into the U.S., international commerce, even superseding national law. Some people at that point might say, are you then saying that you're prejudiced against, or you are a person that is a hate monger toward people who are Islamic? And I want you to know, I have some very dear friends and relatives who have gone to the other side of the world to fight for these people. Okay? And there are people that I know who have died to go and fight for these people. But if you understand their law system, not within their national groups, but in Islam overall, then I don't have to explain this. If you don't know it, then you need to look at that. Because if they successfully bring Sharia law into any region, and they've already done it into the United Kingdom, they've done it in France, they've done it in places in Germany, where cities now are functioning under Sharia law, women lose their rights. And girls lose their rights, in many cases, to a proper education.